Hey, what is up? This is Jake with Exodus, and today we have a fresh new long-form video format of our podcast. It's all about trail camera maintenance, how to make your trail cameras last longer. We're going to be releasing these on Sundays from the podcast if there's video format available. And obviously Wednesday will be Whitetail Cribs. So let's go ahead and get into this podcast. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content.
Lights,
camera,
Follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
if you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got $30 in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
Trail Cam Radio from the guys at Exodus.
All right, we are live in the office here in Ohio for it's ATA week. But aside from that, we have some things to cover. A lot of seasons are starting to close out. A lot of people are pulling down their cameras. Maybe they don't need their full arsenal to use, to survey a late season deer, or maybe your season's over and you have given up. Who knows?
Thrown in the towel.
Yeah. But this is a topic that we've talked about, I think, once prior, but it's worth talking about once again because it's about to be trail camera maintenance season.
Yeah.
And I know you're pretty passionate about it as far as what you see come through the door. And there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it.
Yeah, most of, passion, we'll use that word. Most of my passion comes from seeing people do zero of it.
Uh-huh.
And whether they do zero or no zero, either way, you should educate yourself on it. You should do it because it is going to make a difference.
Yeah. And something that we discussed, I don't know if we've had the conversation on the podcast or not, but a lot of the people we talk to, or a lot of people that we know are consistent in specifically the deer hunting area of their life. You could use it for other areas as well. But they are extremely methodical and very consistent and have a system. And we're hoping this sparks some TLC of trail cameras and the process and how to do that. And here's the playbook on how to take care of your cameras.
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, it seems like all the big buck killers, the guys that are consistently killing deer, whether, they're mainstream guys or, guys that no one hears of, guys that, no one hear about, and we interview them, they all have a system, and they all get the most out of what they're using. And, trail cameras should be no different. They are no different. It's a tool, and you should be doing everything you can to get the most out of them. When we talk about how to use them, how to organize data, what the data means, how to look at that data and dissect it. But when it comes to, maintenance, like we're all doing maintenance on tree stands at the end of the year. You should be your bow, everything else that you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that just neglect their cameras. They don't do any maintenance with their cameras. And I can honestly say probably before Exodus, I probably didn't do any maintenance with mine either.
Mm-hmm. Which that has, with trail cameras having a shorter lifespan, most trail cameras.
That's very true.
So that's something to take into account. But a lot of people are, buy once, cry once is a common term.
Uh-huh.
And obviously our products aren't extremely cheap, and it comes with a 5-year warranty.
Right.
But I guess with some people that maybe aren't doing that, are buying cameras that are lasting a year tops or 2 years
Right.
too.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a super valid point. I guess if you're buying products with such a low life expectancy, you're almost making that purchase knowing like, okay, I got 12 months and then I'm just going to replace it next year. There's no reason for me to really go in and do anything. But at the end of the season, if like those things are still working, if you're buying that $28 Tasco and you pull at the end of the season and it's still working, like
Mm-hmm.
spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes on it, and you might get another 12 months out of it.
Right.
So I don't know.
I think that's important though. And like I said, people put their bow, hang their bow on a wall, or they have it in their garage, or it's wherever it's at.
That's a funny thing. It's like we see all these people buying renders, right?
Yes.
It's probably the easiest product we've ever had as far as like the effort to sell them because
Mm-hmm.
they almost sell themselves. And we still get phone calls from people who they'll put the antenna on and then they'll throw 3 of them in their pack and then hike in, and then they go to open their pack up, the antennas are broken.
Right.
Because they're not being careful in how they transport these things. And then you see guys that throw them in the back of their truck. or they'll stack a bunch of cameras together. So like the back of the housing where like the offset is, like the grips the tree, like this kind of rigid plastic, they'll stack those things right on their flash unit. And then they're rubbing and scratching and doing like, why? Like you wouldn't do that with a DSLR. Like if you spent $2,000 on a mirrorless or DSLR type camera, like you'd take care of the thing. But they'll spend $2,000 or $3,000 on trail cameras and just beat the hell out of them.
Right. Or even a $200 or $300 handy cam too.
Right. A
GoPro.
GoPro.
You're gonna have a nice little case with it, whether it's a Pelican case or soft case.
Right.
But yeah, you're exactly right. People throw them, sling around. Yeah, that's.
I mean, they're made to be outside. They're made to be in the elements. They're made to be tough. But that doesn't mean
It doesn't give you the green light to be hard on it.
Exactly.
And it's just like anything, like the old timer, like the old farmers that take care of anything and it exceeds life expectancy. Obviously, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about some of the old farmer tricks of getting your trail camera to last longer.
I don't know. Well, yeah, we'll skip that, I guess. I had.
Well, maybe it depends on the farmer.
Yeah, yeah. I had an old battery trick from my grandfather, and it must have been like an old wives' tale or something. But he always used to tell us to keep like AA, D cell, C cell batteries like in the freezer. I don't know what the reason was. He said it would last longer, which I've never, knowing what I know now about batteries, like no, not with alkalines. No,
right.
Keeping them at cold temperatures is not going to do anything. It's going to change the resistance. But for whatever reason, like somewhere along the lines, someone must have told him like keep your batteries in a freezer.
Got to preserve them.
Yeah, it's not a piece of meat. Like don't do that with your batteries.
That's a good piece of advice. So I guess I'll let you kind of dive into it. But what are one of the first things that are at the top of your list when it comes to making your cameras ready to go for the next time you use them? Yeah,
and that's what all of this is going to, I guess, tie back to is making sure that they're ready for the next season, and doing this in the postseason to get more out of your camera. So the very first thing is making sure that your firmware is up to date in that camera. Manufacturers across the board consistently release firmware updates, whether there's a bug that needs corrected or there's some type of update in the hardware. They typically release that in firmware. And sometimes, like we just had a firmware release in September. People are getting geared up. Sometimes they have their cameras in the field. They don't have time to do it during the season. So when you pull those cameras, the very first thing you should do is go to the manufacturer's website, look at what firmware is available, and then reference the firmware on your product to make sure it is up to date. Because one of the things that I guess some people may not know, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably understand and realize this, but each piece of hardware that's in that trail camera, not each piece, but certain pieces of hardware actually have their own firmware downloaded on that specific, like the microcontroller, the firmware controller, they have specific firmware versions already installed and that operate that chip system or that chipset outside of the firmware of the actual camera. So there's two different types of firmware there. And most people, when you hear firmware, they're thinking, okay, it's the operating system of the camera is actually what you're updating. But sometimes those updates will also involve hardware updates from specific hardware manufacturers. So you're using like a Qualcomm chipset or something. Maybe they released a maintenance firmware, a maintenance release 12, 18, 24 months after that chipset came to market, and maybe it changes something. Maybe it increases battery life, or it reduces power consumption to increase your battery life. Maybe it allows you to process more than one application or execute more than one application simultaneously. So there's a lot of different things that can happen on the hardware side that can cause a trail camera manufacturer to update their firmware. So it's not always related to bugs. Sometimes it is related to that hardware specific. So that's one of the things that you won't see from your trail camera manufacturer. They're not going to tell you, hey, we're running this Qualcomm chipset and they released an update for us. They just present that information as an update, firmware update for that camera. So regardless of the root cause of it, it's good to check that stuff.
Absolutely. Probably the easiest way to translate that too is the iPhone. hear me out. There's every year they usually release sometimes a complete overhaul of the operating system, and sometimes there's just general updates that fix bugs.
Right.
Cameras a lot of times are very similar to that. Sometimes the update might not change that much, but there's things going on that you don't see that it needs to be done. It's not necessarily going to change how your text messages look or anything like that.
That's a great analogy. 100%. So when you see the iOS 1.3 or 1.7 or whatever they're updating it to, it's not always going to be a bug that's on that iPhone, just like you said. Sometimes it's related to the specific pieces of hardware that they're using.
Absolutely, yeah. So head to on our website. We have a video on how to do it as well, and we're about to release another one on maybe if you run into some issues. There's some other things that we can talk about possibly another day on how to do it.
Well, just touch on that real quick. We will have another video up on our YouTube channel, because when we did release that firmware update in September, there were some hang-ups. People were following the steps, and they got to a spot where the camera wouldn't update, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. The camera's, it's not letting me update." Well, there's a reason. So yeah, if you're having problems updating your Lift 2, check that YouTube video out. It should be it'll probably be on our site this week. It'll be this week or next week.
Yeah, this week.
But basically, there's only 2 reasons. If you're updating a Lift 2, all of our cameras are a little bit different because they're all using different chipsets and different operating systems. But with a Lift 2 specifically, if you cannot update your camera, there's 2 reasons. One is your battery levels are too low. So there's a low battery warning that prevents you from updating your firmware. Because if you lose power during a firmware update, you're likely going to crash that controller, and then it will need manually reprogrammed here, which our customer base does not have access to the software program with tools to do that. So that's something we have to do here. The other reason is if you do not have the files properly put on your SD card, the camera will not let you perform that update, because again, if it's done incorrectly, it's going to crash that controller, and then it has to be manually rebooted. So those are 2 safety checks that are in place to make sure that our customer base or user isn't going to screw that up.
Yeah, that's important, and that video goes in a little bit more detail as well. And that's an email that we get pretty often. Is it's not letting me update it.
Right.
Well, it's one of those 2 things. Most cases.
Yep.
So I guess rolling into something else that is, so now that you have the firmware up to date, or you can confirm that, or maybe, and honestly too, we always have that. We have 2, a tab for each camera. So maybe just go in, if you have all 3 models, go and check it out, see what's going on, and then make a point to maybe reach out to your manufacturer too. If you're running another camera, because maybe it's not something that they have right there on their website, but hopefully that's something they can kick over to you. So then after you have that, what powers the camera, and maybe one of the second or most important thing is battery trays, checking the terminals, and I'll let you take it away from there.
I hate talking about this because it's like we beat a dead horse with a stick. But anybody that follows my personal Instagram page sees some of the stuff that people have problems with. I guess I share some of that stuff on my IG stories. And it seems like no matter how much we talk about alkaline batteries, lithium batteries, power sources, people still just don't get it. They just don't understand the differences, the problems that one causes versus the other, the advantages, disadvantages. But I guess on the maintenance side of things, it's important that when you're pulling those cameras out of the field, that your battery trays or compartments or terminals are free of corrosion. When those battery terminals start to get corrosion, they're going to lose. I'm looking for the connectivity, I guess, like with currents flowing through. Mm-hmm. That's not the right word.
Resistance?
No, the resistance. Well,
ohms.
The weather will. Yeah, there's some things there with resistance in batteries that will cause them to leak, which ultimately causes the corrosion. But it wasn't the word I was looking for. But anyways, when you start to have issues with batteries discharging faster than what they should be, so like you're setting your camera out and things dying in a week on a set of new batteries, or if it won't power on, anything that is related to your power source, like the very first thing you should check is your battery compartment, your battery tray, and to look for that corrosion, make sure it's free and clean of that stuff. typically when there's battery leakage or explosions, explosion is the wrong word. We talk about batteries exploding, but it's more of them leaking.
Right.
And that's where you get like the powdery white substance. Sometimes that corrosion will be blue or have a green tint. That's directly related to misuse of batteries. Super, super easy to clean up. You can take a baking soda and water solution, 1 part to 1 part, a little toothbrush, whatever. Clean those things up, let them dry, get all that corrosion off. Or you can use vinegar. Vinegar's actually Greg Tubbs, one of our customers, said that's we were talking a little bit back and forth, and that's typically what he's using to clean his stuff up. Personally, we use baking soda and water is what we use here, but that's something that people just, and I don't know why, they just don't get it. But there's 2 different types of corrosion. If you have, if your terminals on that battery tray or battery compartment if they have a rust color corrosion, it's typically from moisture ingress. Like you're getting water or some type of moisture ingress in that camera that's related to a seal problem, not necessarily corrosion from batteries. If that, like I said, if you're getting corrosion that has like that white powdery substance and that corrosion is blue or a green tint, that's from your batteries. Stop using alkaline batteries. If typically that's what it's caused from. If you're using lithiums and you have that problem, then there's a different issue going on there.
That's an interesting difference. I never really thought of that as far as if it's rust color or battery leakage. That's a good little tip to help diagnose the problem. And then even think of, I'm not as mechanically inclined, but like try to start your car. What's the first thing that anyone says? Was the battery good?
Yeah, that's very.
And then a lot of times you go and jiggle the things and then it works.
Yeah. Cleaning terminals on a sealed battery. It's the same exact concept. And we're gonna do a YouTube video on this topic and show some folks how to do it. So if this sounds confusing, check the YouTube video out. We'll go through step by step and actually clean one for you and see exactly what we're doing there. But after you get those things cleaned up, you can use some dielectric grease if you want, some type of silicone-based lubricant that will keep those things, I guess, keep the current flowing through them and offer a little bit of, added protection. Dielectric grease or even like some petroleum jelly with a Q-tip and whatnot. That'll help the cause.
Got it. So anything else you want to talk about as far as making sure the batteries are good? The battery tray itself is in good working order.
Well, a lot of just check the terminals on the inside and the outside of the tray if it's removable. A lot of times, like in our tray, those terminals actually pop out, so you can actually soak them in a solution if you wanted to, like scrub them up, drop them in a glass or a plastic tub, let them soak. If you have like that clamshell style camera, it's going to be a little bit harder to do, but it's the same process. Just take a toothbrush and a pick or something and get those things cleaned up.
Got it. Okay. So another thing too, we talk about these things getting used and abused throughout the entire year. I mean, if you're following a similar trail camera schedule to us, maybe you're putting them out in May, or maybe you're waiting until July until you start putting your cameras out. That's a long time. Like last July, that was a long time from what it is today. So during that process, through the rain, snow, mud, maybe you move them around, possibly insects. Talk about cleaning the actual housing and shell of the camera and why that's important.
Yeah, that's when you're storing these things, that's really when cleaning that shell and housing, I guess, to me, why you should do it is because when you're storing them, like if you're not doing this, then this is just that kind of defeats the purpose, I guess. There's kind of 2 reasons. One is, like, if you ever want to sell that camera, it's just like taking care of your vehicle. Like, if you ever plan to sell this thing, like, the visual effect of having something that's beat up versus having something that looks new and shiny, like, if it looks in better condition, you're going to get more money for it. So if you're the kind of guy that is buying cameras and then reselling them, like, just for the sole purpose, and we have customers like that. We have customers that buy cameras, 20 or 30 cameras, whenever we release a new product, they'll buy 20 or 30 of them, and then when we go to release another camera, they'll sell those ones and they'll buy the new ones. So just for resale value is one reason you should be keeping those things clean. But in the event that you're storing these things and using them year over year over year over year, when you're storing them in, and we'll get into storage a little bit later, but you're typically storing them in warm, dry climates. So if you're not cleaning those housings, you know, in the back of our camera, there's penetrations for our screws, like screw holes basically in the back part of the shell. Those things get packed full of dirt or insects. There's potential for those insects to hatch nests or make nests and those eggs to hatch, like when they're being stored. You definitely don't want that to happen. And like depending on what type of tree you're putting it on, like as the debris and dirt and different things from bark get into that, like they smell like shit. They stink. And I mean, yeah, that's. I don't have anything more.
If you don't want
guess.
your cameras to smell bad.
You probably. Is it a black walnut? Is that the type of tree that?
I thought the hickory was stinky. Well, there's a lot of different stinky trees, but what was the one that came in through here that was just absolutely horrendous?
I don't know specifically what kind of tree it was on, but we see a couple of things. We did have a camera that came in that was that back part of the housing. The screw penetrations were packed with dirt, and it smelled like roadkill. It smelled like something was rotten inside of it, and we correlated that to whatever type of tree it was on. I can't recall exactly what it was after we talked to the guy. But there was one other.
I don't think it was hickory, but no. I think that's what Jason said, but I'm not positive.
Well, yeah, it may have been hickory. But then if they're on pine trees or any type of evergreen,
sap.
Like if there's sap on them, that sap actually can cause some damage to your shells. So that's and all you're doing, warm, mild, soapy water in a rag,
quick bath.
That's it. You're just scrubbing those things up. You don't want to submerge them. Do not submerge them in water. They're not, no camera has, to my knowledge, no trail camera has an IP rating higher than 68. So they're only designed to go underwater for X amount of times and so deep. Mm-hmm. Like once you get beyond that, you're going to have moisture ingress.
Okay, that makes sense. Which, talking about moisture, that leads into the next thing that we definitely want to talk about is gaskets and seals. Obviously, those gaskets are rubber and they can get wore out. Talk about how to check those if they are messed up. How do you take care of that? And I'll kind of let you. This is kind of your brainchild, so I'll let you lead.
Yeah, you're right. Moisture ingress is the number one killer of trail cameras, I guess. But when you're looking at seals and gaskets, the number one thing is you want to make sure that they're properly seated. If you're using an O-ring style gasket, you want to make sure that that thing's not fractured anywhere or torn. Typically, those really shouldn't move a whole lot. That tooling or that molding has a specific groove where that thing fits into, and it really shouldn't come out. Pretty easy to replace, though, if it does. Now, when you look at the C-type flat gaskets, like what we're using, those things actually will move and are made to move a little bit. They're not stretched tight like an O-ring, and they're actually the gasket design that we're using fits over. There's several posts inside of that housing, and that C, the gasket's shaped like I say a C, but it really looks like a Z almost. Like it's flat on top, and then it comes down 90 degrees, and then it has another flap, for lack of a better word. So it's almost, we call it a C gasket, but it's shaped like a Z. And that thing will move with different types of temperatures. So there's thermal expansion and contraction there. So cold temps, it's going to shrink. Warm temps, it's going to expand a little bit. Now there's tolerances there. So when you're looking at a gasket like what we use, like what Browning uses, there's a couple different camera companies that are using that same type of gasket. You will see that thing move a little bit. It's not fixed in place to the point where it's always going to be in the same spot. But it should never be regressed out of the line of sight of somebody. So when you open your camera up, that should never be regressed inside of your housing. Like, it should always be visible, even though it may not be a straight line, it may be a little bit wavy or whatnot. So that's the first thing. Visual inspection, making sure that thing's not broken, fractured, torn, anything like that. And then, obviously, battery tray seal. We have a third housing seal on the top part of our housing, making sure that's properly seated, properly in place. And then just basically taking a damp cloth, cleaning the debris or dust or dirt, anything that's going to prevent that housing from closing properly, seating that seal. And the biggest thing is using some type of, I guess, lubricant and moisturizer, making sure that those seals don't get dry rotted. Like, again, it kind of goes back to the life expectancy of the product. When you're using a camera that's only going to last for a year or two, probably not that big of a deal. But if you're buying a product that's designed to last 5 years, then it, that starts to become.
Don't let it be Achilles' heel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're very easy to replace, but you do have to disassemble the camera. So it's not something you can do as a consumer necessarily as to replace them. But divers use a silicone-based like gasket lubricant. They use that on like the seal of their face mask, I guess. And you can use the same thing on your trail cameras. Just use that in a Q-tip, put that around your seal. Make sure that you don't have to do it in a great excess, I guess. Just a little bit with a Q-tip right around your seals, and you're done.
That's helpful, and especially the point as far as the zigzag where people see. I mean, if we had a camera where people think that needs to be absolutely flush, perfect line, and if it's any sort of variance other than that, they think it's some sort of malfunction. So I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah, we'll like I said, we need to do a YouTube video on this, so we'll have some of those visuals for people to look at if you're not quite getting exactly what we're saying. But depending on what type of seal that is used in a product, some of them are meant to be fixed, like an O-ring style gasket. And if you're using a flat C seal or gasket, they can move. It's not a fixed seal to the point where it's stretched completely tight. So it's going to expand and contract with the temperatures.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Anything else you want to talk about with the gaskets and seals that we didn't cover?
No, I don't think so. I think just making sure they're in place and then using some type of silicone-based lubricant on them. Okay,
so right now they have up-to-date firmware. They have fresh batteries or confirmed battery trays. Everything in that, in the power sense, is in good working order. The shells are clean. The gaskets and seals are good. Now let's talk about the flash units, lens cover, and the PIR cover.
Yeah, this keeping that stuff clean probably relates more to like the performance of the camera rather than the longevity, because these are just plastic covers that actually are covering the specific pieces of hardware or keeping moisture or weather out of the actual shell or the actual housing. So there's not too much there that you're going to do to extend the life of your camera, but you can certainly clean them up and do some things so the camera works more, has better performance basically. So pretty simple, warm, mild, soapy water, wet rag. You're just cleaning the dust off of that stuff. You just want to be careful that there's not any abrasive dirt, grainy substance on those surfaces. So what I typically do, or Jason, when he gets a camera in and he's doing maintenance on it, he'll take an air duster and just hit that with a keyboard cleaner, air duster, whatever, like aerosol sprayer. Yeah. And make sure that there's nothing on there before he actually physically wipes anything off, because once you start scratching, like the lens is the piece of glass that covers the lens is specifically. Once that thing starts to get scratched up, like, it is going to affect your photo quality. And it's the same way with your flash unit. If that thing's completely scratched up and gouged, it's gonna affect the way that light is transmitted
diffused,
through. Yeah. Exactly. And the same with your PIR sensor. So you're not actually cleaning your PIR sensor. The black plastic is the Fresnel lens that you're cleaning. But when that becomes gouged, that affects the concentric rings and how that Fresnel is actually diffusing your sensor and made up. So if that gets damaged, that is going to affect your detection zone. You're either going to cause an extra detection zone, or you're going to create a hole or void in the way that PIR is getting diffused. So, again, just keeping that stuff clean is going to allow your camera to work the way it worked day one.
Yeah, and it's a great time to diagnose this issue now versus when you pull the camera back out and you want to put it out that Saturday. You can get those things taken care of now instead. It's the art of planning ahead.
It's just having a system. Like if you're doing these other steps, it takes, this is 45 seconds. It takes 45 seconds to do that. So do it.
Right. So now that we know the camera is intact, we gave it the Kelly Blue Book inspection or whatever third. What is there any third party? Anyways, you give it the full detail on what it needs. Are all the components working? Everything's good and ready to go. Now it's time to put the suckers away. If you are, and we get 2 comments on this. I leave my cameras out 365.
Yep.
And we also get some people that do take them out. It still might be a good idea if you leave them out 365 to go through some of this stuff and do a quick spot check on them as well.
Yeah, even if you're not putting them up for a year, putting them up for a few months out of the year, like you should still be checking the firmware,
right.
Or you should still be checking your battery compartments. You should be cleaning your shells up, checking your gaskets. Like
right.
That's you should be doing that stuff regardless. But the last step, if you are going to take them out of service for a month or a couple months, like storing them correctly kind of ties all that together. And there's a couple things, if they're not stored correctly, they potentially you could harm them.
So what are some scenarios where you would not want them that people may think would be okay?
Well, number one, you don't want to store your trail cameras around any other powered electronic device or magnet. You keep them away from other electronics if they're powered up. So you wouldn't want to set them, right next to a laptop computer or right next to your TV or desktop, or maybe in your shop where you have, I don't know, if you're a welder or fitter, you have a bunch of magnets laying around. You want to keep them away from any magnetic fields. So that would be one thing. Definitely do not want to do that. You do not want to store your cameras with batteries in them. Batteries should always be taken out of the device, as well as the SD card. You should always take your SD card out too. And I don't have any scientific makeup or scientific information on the SD card thing, but I compare it to like a magazine of a gun. If you talk to like competitive shooters, when you start talking about handguns and magazines, or even, I guess, home defense stuff, they say it's best practice not to leave a magazine loaded to full capacity for long periods of time because of the compressed springs. Like
we get the spring.
Well, it's going to cause some type of, eventually, they say it's not best practice because there's potential there for it to cause misfires or jams.
I see.
So with that SD card socket, it's a spring-loaded device. Like as you're putting that in, that there's tension in that spring, and again, like there's no sign. We don't have any evidence that it's going to cause that card socket to go bad.
Mm-hmm.
But relating it, in my mind, I guess relating that to firearm magazines, like it kind of makes sense. Like it's the same concept there. So it's just a habit that I've gotten into when I do take cameras out of service and they're in my Bronc box or wherever. I don't put SD cards in them. That, and it allows you to kind of audit your SD card collection and make sure that you have two cards for every camera, as things aren't being misplaced. Like you can kind of.
Yeah, if you're someone that has come across this podcast or maybe this information, and this is the first time you're hearing that, the 2 SD card rule is one to live by. And I understand in the heat of the season it's hard to implement, or maybe it's just hard to go to Amazon and buy however many cards. Now's the time to do that. It's the easiest time to do that, whenever you're taking them out.
Yeah, right now, as seasons are coming to an end, you maybe run your cameras to see, collect inventory what's made it through the season, or maybe you run until deer start shedding.
Yep.
I guess not another month or so. But when you take them out of service, like if you're not living by that 2 SD card rule, like you're right, now's the time to go in and label these cameras before you put them in storage. Make sure you have 2 SD cards married to that specific camera.
Yeah, it's gonna make your upcoming year so much smoother. Just, it's easy to say, hard to do.
It is, and I think, when you're in a pinch, yeah, you're going to grab an SD. Like, you're not going to not run a camera because you don't have the right SD card. Like, everybody's going to do it at some point in time. But it's just good practice to get into having 2 per camera and making sure that you're aware of, the things that can go wrong when you start flip-flopping SD cards between devices.
Absolutely, yeah. So where are you storing your cameras typically? Or what are some key characteristics that you should be storing in what environments?
Some type of dry environment and with mild temperatures. So room temperatures, typically, sometimes I will keep in my garage. My garage is heated usually to about 50, 55 degrees. So 50 to 70 degrees, let's say. So mild temperatures limit the moisture, next to zero moisture. And store them either in a Ziploc bag or the package or box that it came in. And a lot of times, like with our products, we ship them with a little silica pack that, it will absorb moisture. Save those little silica packs, put them in that Ziploc with that camera. Your SD cards go in there too. Everything's all together, one package. So when you pull it out of service, when you pull it out of storage and get ready to put it into service, you have the camera ready to go. You have both SD cards right there in your hand.
Yeah, that's great advice and something that I do a decent job, but there's definitely room for improvement on myself and how I go through the end of the year inventory as well, and how to handle these cameras. It's something that is easy to overlook, and I mean, cameras, they just get used and abused. It's just what it is.
Yeah, just like, I guess, some bonus information. I mentioned like guys beating them up in transport. There are some things, like if you're the guy that's a public land guy and you're throwing 4 or 5 cameras in your pack and walking X amount of miles, is it that big of a deal if they're bumping around? No, it's probably not. But if you take the back of that strap and wrap it around the face of that camera, so the strap is actually protecting the flash unit, is protecting the lens, it's protecting that Fresnel lens of the camera to where it's not going to give, like, that is a simple tip that if you're carrying more than one camera in your pack, like, every camera should be bundled up like that.
Yes.
If you're transporting cellular cameras with a removable antenna, that thing should never be screwed on until, like, it should be in a separate pouch in your pack until you get to that location of, where you want to put it.
Yeah. Simple.
Like, it is. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it amazes me sometimes that we talk about some of this stuff, but people, for whatever reason, they get.
Well, they're excited. They're ready to get it out, and I get that, and that's awesome that you are excited to go put your camera out. But that's obviously a great tip, because that's the last thing you want is to walk all the way out there. You get to the spot you want, and then you got to walk back in without putting it out.
And then one other thing on cellular cameras, if it seems like most 4G devices now are using some type of antenna that's hinged. We use the hinged antenna. There's always potential there for animals, squirrels, raccoons, whatever, to mess with those things and break them. Like, that's a real problem. So when you get to that spot and you hang that camera, look at the orientation of the hinge. So I always hang, like, every render that I hang, that hinge is either facing away from the tree or it's facing 90 degrees to the tree. I never have the hinge side of the antenna face towards the tree, because if something gets on, starts messing with that, there's potential there that if there's any, they're not going to wedge themselves behind it, and it makes no sense to have the hinge facing towards the tree because it can't go anywhere. So if there's pressure applied to it, the hinge needs to be faced in an orientation where it can be relieved and not break. So having it faced away from the tree is going to save your antenna, or facing it at least 90 degrees away from the tree. So you never want to face it towards the tree.
That's a good piece of advice, especially in the world. I think it would be interesting to know, like, a case study or how many, if you did a survey on what year was the first year they used a cell camera and what that trend looks like. So, like, for 2015, X% of trail cameras used cell cameras for the first time, and then, like, what is that now for 2019, and what would it be for 2020? And I would have to say it has to be exponentially growing every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if exponential is even the right word, as in, like, rapid.
Yeah, I still think it's probably a fairly low number.
Right, yeah. But that number is doubling, so so much faster. Since
Oh,
it's such a low. It was such a low area or
Right.
low sample size.
I would guess it's somewhere around 20% right now.
Total trail camera users are
Yeah.
using cell cameras.
Yeah. Like 20% of market sales
Uh-huh.
are cellular cameras.
And
versus standard cameras.
how many of those were first time buyers this year? You think?
Ooh.
8, 10, 12?
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
So yeah, there's just a big learning curve. And even if you look at our YouTube channel, we've put out some cell camera content that's just general public service announcement type style stuff. And there's a lot of traction, a lot of people looking at that stuff because there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's only going to increase. I mean, after using a render for 6-7 months or whatnot, it certainly changes the way you use the tool. There's way more information. It's easier to correlate that information because you're not having to go back
Yes.
and look at pictures from 3 months ago and then look at even if you're using Deer Lab or some kind of trail camera software, the correlation to weather and deer movement that you're seeing instantly,
Yes.
like it is. I mean, we were just talking about that, like wind speed and how it's dictating deer movement. Like it's so much easier to open your phone and see, okay, well, I didn't get any pictures last night, and then I go look at the weather, and the wind speed's at 15 miles an hour. And then the moment that it drops to single digits, like there's deer on food.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to learn, and I think cell cameras are going to help. Just in general for big bucks, wildlife, it's a pretty big. I wouldn't call it revolution, but it's a really big product.
I think wireless trail cameras are the biggest technological advance that deer hunters have seen since modern day firearms.
You going on record with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. We'll have to have a podcast just about that topic in general.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting. Not like since the Raven crossbow.
Not since the Raven crossbow.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, anything else you want to cover up here as we talk about trail camera maintenance?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Stop using alkaline batteries. Clean your battery trays. Make sure your firmware is up to date.
Yep. And check out the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed already, we have informational stuff. We have Whitetail Caribs, and we'll be kind of breaking down some of these subcategories of today's topic into videos, so it's a little bit more bite-sized for people to reference it.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in this week, and we'll be talking to you guys next Tuesday. But if you listen all the way to the very end, we may have some bonus ATA content as well. So keep an eye out. Thanks for everyone that left reviews, and thank you to everyone that left for the first 10 people that was acclaimed.
Yep.
Very quickly. So we appreciate it, and we're happy everyone tunes in every week. So, all right. Well, thanks.